To combine animation states together, we need to use an animator. In this lecture, I'll show you how to create an animation with complex animation states. So to begin with, if you'd like to follow along, you can get hold of the Open Closed Door project that comes with this lecture. You'll also find it on my website. Okay, so to begin, once you've opened up the project, you'll be looking at a door. Now this door comes in a few different pieces. There's a main body to the door, which is the entire door, and then it has a door frame, which is around the outside, and then there's this door object itself, which is this particular door, and this is the one we want to animate. So we're going to animate this door to slide up and down. All right, so to begin with, let's create an opening and closing animation, as well as a few other different states. So first of all, let's go into Animator. Now with the door selected, this is the animation window that we used in the previous lecture, we're going to create an animation and we'll call that close. So we'll save that. And this animation is just going to be the door in closed state, which is the way it already is. So let's add a property in the animation transform, and we're going to be animating its position, which will give us two keyframes, one at 0 and one at 1. So this is the default, and it will also keep the current Y position of the door, which happens to be in this case 0.14. And so we don't want that to move at all in this closed animation. Okay, so we're now going to create another animation and we'll call that open. So go to the top of the animation window, this is where close is written, and go create new clip, and we will call this open. Before we set any keyframes in the open animation, we'll move the door to its open position. So make sure the door is selected in the hierarchy and drag it up. Okay, we're selecting the door itself, not the other components that are around it. So the parent, which is door, is not being animated. It's just the child part of the door. So that will be its open position, and you can see that the animation created a keyframe automatically for us in position 0. Now we're going to then also go to 1 second and add another keyframe on the value that changed. So in this case, you can see that it changed the Y position. So we can just click next to the Y position and go add key, and that will add a Y position for that door in the up or open position. Right, so the next animations we want to create is the movement between the open position and the closing position. Since the door is already in the open position in this particular clip, we'll start with the door closing animation. So let's go back to the animation window and create a new clip and call it closing. Then save that. Okay, now the property, again, we're modifying is the transform Y position. So let's add that in. So currently the closing will look like the open because it's got our default 2 keyframes we created. But the final keyframe here for the Y is where we want that door to be closed. Now, if you want that final key of close to be the same position as the closed door, then you can actually select the Y position, which is this one here, and set this key for Y back to what it was in the closed position. Now that was a 0.14 from memory. Let's just check that. So if we go to the closed animation and we just click in here, you'll see that it is 0.14 when it's in the closed position. So let's go back to closing and to the final keyframe here, and we can just type that in there, 0.14 for our closed door. Now we'll see when we play through this animation that we have closing. Right, so with the door now at the closed position, let's create the opening animation. So create new clip, opening, add property, transform, position, add, and we're now going to open so that in the 0 position we're at 0.14, which is what we want. And to open it, we have to open it at 1 second to the height. So let's just go back and look at the open position and see what its height is. So it's 4.2. In the opening animation, we can then go to that keyframe for the Y and set that to 4.2. And now when we scrub through this, you'll see that we have an opening animation. Right, so we've now created the 4 animations that we need to have the door open and close. The next step is to create what's called an animation state machine, which will connect all of these different animation states and make them run smoothly. When we start creating an animation, the object that you're creating the animation for gets a animator controller added to it. And in the inspector under door, you can see that there is this animator component and its controller is named door. So this was automatically created. If we double click on this, it's going to open up this animator view. The animator view is a different window to the animation view, even though they're named similarly. I'm going to drag it over here so that we can see our door. We've got our scene in our game. And then we've got this animator view. Now you can move around in there by holding down the Alt key and dragging the mouse around. What you'll notice inside this view is we've got these states, and these are the ones we've just created, our animation states. In the animator, you can choreograph the way that these animation states are going to play. Currently, if you have a look, they're not connected by anything. There's this entry green node that we call the states, and it has an arrow, which we call it transition, going to the close. So this is saying when the game starts, we're going to, by default, play this close animation. Now, if you don't want that to be the first state, and say we wanted to have a look at the door opening, we can select that state, right-click on it, and go Set as Layer Default State. It will go orange, and then when we press play, it will play this particular animation. So let's just have a look. And what it's doing is it's looping over and over again. So remember I said in the last lecture that when we create an animation, Unity will automatically make it a looping animation. And that's fine for us at the moment. Because what we're going to do now is actually join these up into a cycle of opening and closing. So let's just arrange these into a shape like this. What they look like in here doesn't make any difference, but it just helps us to envisage what's going on. So let's start the door in open, close, because it is closed. So we will set that as our default animation. Now, once that's finished playing, we want to transition from close to opening. To do that, we right-click on close and then select Make Transition, and we'll now have control over this arrow, and we can put that on any state we like. So we want to put it on the opening state. So it'll go from close and then it will do an opening. If we run this at this point, you'll be able to see that playing. So the close animation runs and it then automatically transitions to the opening animation. This animation, remember, is set to loop. So whatever animation the animation state finishes on will just continue to run. Okay, so we want to now transition from opening to close, so we can create another transition. And then we want to go from open to closing, and then we want to go back to close. So this is going to be our loop of animations. Let's run it and see what happens. The way this is working is that each animation state runs for a second each. And you can see them firing off. So the blue line through each is showing you how far through the animation it is. And each time a transition fires, it also shows up in blue. So you can see the way that the animation is running. Okay, so if we wanted to make the opening and closing a little bit longer, say 3 seconds, then we need to move the final keyframes of those animations. So let's just press stop, go back to our animation window. Now we've got the opening one here, so I'm just going to zoom out using the scroll on the mouse, and I can grab the very topmost keyframe for all of our animations and drag that out. Zoom out a bit further and go to 3 seconds to make that animation 3 seconds long. And the closing one will also make 3 seconds long. Okay, so now if we run this, you'll find that the opening is much slower. At this point, how much it is closed and how much it is open is not important. In the next lecture, we'll actually look at controlling this with some script and add some triggers into the environment and a character that can walk up to the door and have it automatically open for you. So that's the animator window. We're going to be working with this a lot because these states and transitions are very important in the process of creating complex animations, and we'll also create some very simple code that starts to control when and how these animations move.